So, I mean, IP obviously has been the sort of driving force of new distribution networks in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. I mean, we deal with a lot, obviously, in in the content side, business model side, all sorts of sides, and it's easy to forget that actually telcos have gone into it pretty much defensively in order to protect their voice revenue. In fact, I protect the voice revenue is what we used to call IPTV. And it's easy to forget that IP is actually a best efforts type of transmission. So, I mean, one can't start again, but this must have created all kinds of new problems for T&M providers.
Yeah, I'll also say I think the challenge is probably more on the operators and on the system providers, like the switch providers, to handle video traffic, because they realize that IP that's carrying video acts differently than IP that's carrying voice or data. And so there was a learning curve, especially early on, that's where one of the weak links in the network was the IP network. It couldn't handle the video traffic, and people didn't understand that, just acted differently. But for test and measurement, especially if it comes from the IP side or the MPEG side, I'm not sure I would call it a challenge. I think the challenge now is understanding that once that IP is no longer the issue, is what are the issues? And the issues are, we're finding is more in the encoders. So you're going to have to go deeper into the actual video and the audio. And that's becoming a real challenge because it's one thing to do IP, another thing to pull out all the MPEG information and track all that in all the programs, but completely different to really dive in and start looking at the frames and the slice or doing audio level measurements. But that's what what the operators are expecting, and that's what they're looking for.
I mean, because the last mile in terms of delivery over a telco network is often the worst mile in terms of maintenance and even in terms of the CPE, where the set-top box will be the cheapest piece of kit in the line. To be fair, I think we were all quite cynical about how telcos would manage this kind of QoE, given they had this 5 nines tradition in voice, and if your voice phone lets you down a couple of times a year, nobody dies. Whereas if you then have your TV coming over the phone line and it does let you down in the World Series, then then there are riots on the streets. I mean, how do you think they've actually done? I mean, what's been the level of service, and have they learned?
Yes. Well, first of all, it depends who's playing in the World Series.
Yeah, whatever that is.
Whatever that is. But the last mile has been the challenge, and the introduction of IPTV has actually provided an interesting solution to that. One of the reasons the last mile has been a challenge is because it's always been viewed from a test and measurement point of view from what I'll describe as the near end, or some centralized access or switching node. And to be able to see out from that point all the way to the termination and through to the service as the customer perceives that service has been somewhat difficult and limited. For voice services, it was sufficient. For IPTV services, it's not. With the introduction of managed CPE, set-top boxes that have information available through test and measurement and status and configuration, there now becomes a construct or a mechanism in a test system that can gather information from the far end, from the point where the end customer sees the service, and integrate that with information from the near end or the access node and further up into the network, and put all of that information together. And as such, you not only get an end-to-end view, but you get a much better, if you like, double-ended test view of the last mile. And that has been, I think that particular introduction of that type of test and measurement has been significant in the ability to, again, identify and locate faults.
Do you think there's going to be the need and the ability to go another step? I mean, a lot of talk now is about the home network, and that the set-top box, be it from a telco or a satellite company, will become the home gateway. And then, again, partly through the ubiquity of IP, you'll be able to have lots of plug-and-play devices that the operator won't necessarily control. I mean, do you think? I mean, is this a bit of a nightmare looming, or is this another opportunity looming?
It's an opportunity for us as a test and measurement vendor. Probably a nightmare for the service provider. As you say, the home network is an issue. You have networks which have been in place, for 10 years, 15 years. Traditionally, they've been off bounds from the service provider. It's, what's in the home is yours.
Yeah.
You get weekend hobbyists running new lines up to the attic down to the basement, and that can just cause havoc within the network. especially now you're trying to deliver high bandwidth services, high value services direct to the TV. So there's certainly a big challenge there for the providers. It's one of the things that we've actually sort of been quite active in terms of developing a range of in-home test equipment specifically to tackle this challenge.
Certainly the customer will expect that if it's got a USB device, I can plug it into anything and it will take care of itself, both in terms of installation and in terms of running.
Yeah.
You sound unconvinced.
No, I'm just laughing. I could see my parents, taking that approach. And that's kind of what I've got to think of is, my parents or my grandparents would think like that. But
I don't think I would know what a USB was, to be honest. But I mean, is that something that means the T&M business? I've never thought of it as being involved in my Panasonic radio or whatever, but if that becomes, something that's linked into my home network and I expect it to carry my pictures and some of these operators who are now realising that being in the content distribution business keeps them on very low margins because that's the way the pay TV business works, are upping and upping and upping their functionality. We have in the UK Virgin talking about becoming the IT manager for the home. So it will run your home office system, it will run your storage, it will run your communications network on the kind of network side. Now, if that goes wrong, they have a really serious problem. I mean, can you see?
Well, I know of a broadcaster who wanted to do a home network and looked at having test equipment to take care of the whole thing. But obviously they were very concerned about the peripherals which got hooked up to the network. But they had thought of going down that route and what they needed and how to protect it. But due to the financial situation, I think it's on the back burner at the moment.